And yet some surprising things in reading your book are not taboo, including lying to patients, noble lies told to patients, right?
Right. One of the things that people, of all the probably most famous noble lies, I have that chapter on 3 noble lies, is this whole idea of a chemical brain imbalance. So for many years, we knew that psychiatrists had this idea that schizophrenia is caused by too much dopamine, depression is caused by not enough serotonin, and once these commercials started happening on television, which was the mid-90s, drug companies realized, oh wow, this is let's go with this theory, because this is going to, most people are not going to use antidepressants they knew historically, but if we could convince people that they're depressed because they have low levels of serotonin, and these SSRI drugs, these serotonin reuptake inhibitors, Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, they correct this imbalance, that's going to work for sure. And it did. It was a brilliant kind of marketing sales campaign. The thing was, by the 1990s, there was already, the science had looked at this issue, whether people who were depressed had low levels of serotonin, and they had discarded this whole theory. And we could, if you're interested, I could talk to you about what the research was done, but they didn't talk about this, psychiatry, because it gave them a lot more power, and drug companies, they had begun to partner and brag about this partnership. It was an APA, American Psychiatric Association medical director, who was proud of this partnership they had with drug companies, and so this was a good deal for both of them to have everybody believe in. Finally, though, there was enough stuff coming out by around 2011. Establishment insider psychiatry finally was being more open like that. We have discarded, we jettisoned this theory. So a guy I talk about a lot is a guy named Ronald Pies, who is a big shot insider psychiatrist, the editor emeritus at something called the Psychiatric Times, and he called this chemical imbalance theory, he literally used the phrase urban legend. And he talked about, no well-informed psychiatrist that ever believed this. But it was really interesting for me. He comes out with this in 2011. 2012, Elise Spiegel over at NPR, she does this whole story where she says, like, wait a minute, I mean, my grandfather, well, she doesn't talk about this in the story, but I knew this, her grandfather was president of the American Psychiatric Association, and a guy named John Spiegel, but when she was 17, she was depressed. He tells this whole story on air, and her parents, I guess she was middle class, upper middle class, they take her to Johns Hopkins, and she hears the same story everybody else hears, that she's depressed because she has low levels of serotonin, and we could correct it with these drugs. And then she finds out that this isn't true, and she does this whole story on, it's still archived, people could listen to it, and she talks to these psychiatrists, and they tell her things like, well, if we told people, once people believe in this chemical imbalance theory, then they would be more comfortable being depressed, they'd be more comfortable taking their medication. If you try to give people too complex ideas, that makes them even more anxious. You got to give them something simple. So these were the things that she was told by researchers later on, why they kept on going on with this theory. But if you ask most Americans, even most who are most responsible, I should tell you, for prescribing psychiatric drugs, much more than psychiatrists. If you ask most of them, I haven't seen a poll recently, but I would bet you the majority of them still believe in this chemical imbalance theory, just like WMDs. There was a couple of years ago, I saw a poll on how many Americans still believe that WMDs were found in Iraq. And it was like, among Republicans, majority. It's like, over 50% of Republicans. And so it's the whole thing that great scientific critic Carl Sagan used to talk about, like if you get bamboozled, once you get bamboozled, it's hard to ever let go of that bamboozle. You get attached to this idea. So that's one of the wild things, that they've already abandoned this psychiatry. They finally abandoned this idea of this chemical imbalance theory, and they moved on to some other ideas like circuitry defects or something like that, but most people don't know about that.